welcome to this new episode. And today I am with Maura. How are you, Maura?
I'm well, thank you, Luca. Thank you for having me here.
Very nice. Maura is very well famous in Koh Phangan as a poet, a writer. She's also a trauma and crisis specialist and an educator. So, Maura, can you tell us a little bit more about your background and your journey in life so far?
I've always had this big zest for life and wanting to get the most out of it. And there's a few things that have always followed my path, which is the arts and creativity and nature and being embodied. So I know that's a kind of a catchphrase now. Many people talk about being embodied.
I think it's a good phrase because indeed people are very much in their mind, right, isn't it?
And truly, the greatest journey is the head to the heart. So really being able to get all of the things we experience intellectually, analytically, and then being able to integrate them into our life experience and how we experience people and our situations. And so I grew up very athletic. I was a bit of a tomboy, as they say, and always really playing sport and almost like I had this inner drive, but I wasn't sure where to focus it. So it went into this maybe a bit of aggression when it came to, pushing myself too hard. But my other outlet was always poetry. And so there was a softness as well. And then I just naturally fell into education. I grew up with a family of educators, and I always loved children and working with people and understanding neuroscience and the mind. So at a very early age, I was teaching special education in New York City. And then that was just many, many years of teaching many different ages and learning so much about how people tick and how they work and how they emote as well. So learning about emotional intelligence as much as intellectual intelligence. So then the next step for me was moving into the therapeutic realm.
Very good. I know now you work as a therapist, but tell me a little bit more about your poetry. Because, that's how I got to know you a little bit more, I think, because Maura was in one of the events that we run in Koh Phangan, and she was reading her poetry there and said, wow, this is fantastic.
Thank you. I received that. Thank you. Yes, I believe that poetry is the language of the heart and the language of the soul, and there's really no wrong way to write poetry. And so many teenagers get out their angst and get out their heartache through pouring onto the page, rhymes and stories, and but there's also something really nuanced about the language when you allow yourself to open up to the muse, I call it. And there's almost a language that's underneath the language itself, beyond the words. And that's what I connect with the most. And I see poetry in everything, and communication, and this beautiful island and nature. And so sometimes, as I said, I wake up in the middle of the night with words just pouring through my mind. It's not ideal at 2 a.m., but...
Well, when it comes, it comes.
Exactly, and there's no denying the muse, so I often have to get it on paper. Yeah.
Beautiful. And of course, you wrote a poetry book in 2018, is that right?
Yes. Yeah, well, I started writing it in 2016, and then it was published. I have it here. Architect of the Divine, Restoring the Heart Space for Love. And it's bilingual, so it's in English and in Spanish. And I like to call them medicine poems because they chart a course of healing, which is what we're all on, this journey to remembering who we really are. And so a lot of these poems kind of elicit thought-provoking ideas and encourage the heart to open up a little bit more.
That's a lovely concept indeed. Tell me about your experience living in Guatemala.
Guatemala es mi corazón. It's definitely my heart home, and I spent 5 straight years there, but then over a period of a decade going back and forth. And I had a very amazing job working in a bilingual school, which was very holistic. So holistic healing, nature, recycling, and I ran the program for the English department. And apart from that, though, there was a lot in Guatemala that I say grew me up. It's improper English, but really helped me access certain parts of myself. I really started to involve myself more in energy medicine and herbal medicine and understanding different healing modalities as well. And it also added into, prior to going there, I had trained in expressive arts therapy. So I was able to access that information and use it in the education world with my students. So, I have this big vision that that's where education's moving,
I love the fact that, very good educators and practitioners in general are able to tap into different traditions, different methodologies, and blend them in a way that is suited to the specific person they're in front, right? And I think you really embody that because your background is so diverse and you learned and studied so many different things and lived in different cultures and countries, and so you are literally the result of this life experience, going through different modalities and learning different culture, different therapies. Is that right? So tell us a little bit more about your therapy work now.
It's very unique. I call it experiential because it doesn't follow just traditional talk therapy. There is talking, but as you said, it draws on all of these different aspects of, it's the mind, it's the body, it's the emotion. So it's very somatic in that when we have a thought or a feeling, if we can tap into where we feel it in the body, and then how it's presenting itself. And sometimes that's through a color, sometimes it's through an image, and then we work a lot with dialoguing with that. And then actually the main aspect of the work I do is self-directed compassion, which is similar in the Buddhist tradition of the metta, but it's more than that because we actually use language to honor the self and validate the aspects of ourselves that were not given a voice, even from childhood. And so it's super powerful and it's empowering. So I'm simply a co-pilot.
Yeah, there's a modality that is very interesting to me. A friend of mine is practicing. It's called Ho'oponopono.
Yes, absolutely. The Hawaiian tradition.
It's very simple, yet so effective. And you can repeat it as a mantra that sort of reinforces some self-loving and also loving for the world and other people, and a sense of forgiveness as well.
Absolutely, and forgiveness, and it's self-forgiveness, really. All the shame seems to be the heaviest layer, the thickest cloak that we wear as humans, and it can be quite a deterrent from accessing that love that we know exists, and it sounds so, all you need is love, and it's like, but if you can't actually feel it, then that becomes frustration.
For sure. So let's say that I am a new client of yours and you want to help me out a little bit because life has been a little rough recently. How do you actually structure your therapy work?
So it starts with a dialogue always, and I'm very open to people meeting me because, or having a conversation on the phone just so they can feel the resonance of, who I am and see if it fits, because trust is the basis of this, and it can be really hard to trust when you don't know someone. And then it usually starts with a background, just learning about, who you are and, really what's been coming up for you. And it incorporates some meditation as well, so we drop into the heart of the matter. So what is it that's really, really happening? And then we draw threads and sew it together and see how maybe what's happening right now is connected to something before. And then the work goes more into the somatic work where you, if you're comfortable lying down or if you'd prefer to sit, you have a choice. And sometimes there is hands-on work, and I'm always discussing, I'm going to place my hand on your heart, place my hand on your arm. Sometimes I incorporate singing or vocals, and sometimes I use my therapeutic singing bowls or rattles, bells, and sometimes there's drumming as well, or just simple silence.
Very nice. So indeed, there is a mixture of different therapies all in one.
Yes.
Starting with a sort of talking therapy, which is very important indeed for people to open up and make sense. And the meditation, I suppose you want people to be in a certain state of consciousness where it's a little bit easier for them to tap into a deeper level of their self, isn't it? What kind of meditation do you do?
So, well, it's different because depending on the person, we do a lot with breathing. So there's a lot with breathing and connecting with the breath, and also just a guided visualization to ground into the body. So different ways to do that. And sometimes I'll draw upon other energy medicine modalities such as EFT, which is the tapping. Sometimes the nervous system is a little overwhelmed, so it's important to call upon the parasympathetic nervous system first. So we tap on different acupressure points. And then with the talking, you know, some cognitive behavioral therapy, some motivational interviewing. These are just the therapeutic terms for it.
Sure.
And yeah, it's really it's a beautiful co-creation. It's a process that we're in together, and essentially you are the one that's leading. And so there can be a lot of emotion that comes from that.
I'm sure. Yeah, very interesting indeed. You know, and I really like it. And do you do it online as well?
Yes, I started many years ago working mainly distance because I was always moving around, and so now it's nice to be able to be in person. And of course, there are different things that can happen when someone's in front of me.
Like the touch.
The touch. Yeah. However, not to believe that can't happen. And I work with, you know, even teenagers online, and sometimes if they're really in distress, I'll ask, may I place my hand on your back? And without a beat, that yeah, sure, you know, and then it's that, you know, energy transcending space and time, and they can feel that that presence of knowing that they have support, even if it's not physically touching them.
And I can imagine, of course, the client experiences the therapy, and it's great because they make sense of their past, of what's going on within themselves. They maybe feel the body in a different way, etc. And then I'm sure there's going to be an educational aspect because you are an educator.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So
yeah.
People come out of the therapy as well with like some tools.
Absolutely, with tools, with suggestions. You know, I like to call it home play. I had a shamanic dream teacher who used to always call our work that we had to do instead of homework, home play. And then it makes it more, you know, and it's, of course, we're creating together. Does this feel good? Does that? What's a person's affinity? So if you ask them, well, you need to go home and journal every day, and they don't like to write, it's not easy, then that's not going to be effective. So it's finding, you know, other resources, because we have so much out there right now, and everything is online. It's accessible.
Sure.
But really the greatest gift is learning, relearning, or maybe learning for the first time how to be still and how to be in and getting your answers from what you already know, because you are the healer you've been waiting for. And so
Indeed,
yeah.
You know, it's particularly in a world which is you know, overstimulating and with a very busy schedule, so many things to do, it's very difficult to just center and just have a moment for yourself, isn't it, sometimes?
Yep.
And yeah, I also wanted to ask you about the trauma and crisis. So do people like literally call you up in the middle of the night, I'm having a crisis? Or what do you mean by crisis?
Okay, yeah, so that was a term that was created through a particular position that I held where I worked directly in a high school. And so a crisis situation could be panic attack, it could be a fight, a physical fight. And so when these situations, they're considered crisis situations because they require de-escalation of energy, de-escalation of an emotion that's super heightened.
Yeah.
And so I would be the one that would be called in to that situation, and especially, you know, in the United States, in the schools, you know, unfortunately, there's been a lot of school shootings. There's a lot of anxiety that's been amplified through fear, as well as the way in which the education system has created all of this testing. So it's created testing anxiety and not feeling good enough and not being able to produce. So, you know, it's rampant right now. It's really, and it's changed. I can't imagine now not being actually in the schools for a period of time and doing things online. It's created a lot of added anxieties. Yeah.
Would you say the Western culture is very much a competitive culture, isn't it? Where people are always put against each other in terms of, you know, getting the promotion, pushing a little harder, going the extra mile all the time. And some people are predisposed to do very well in this kind of environment, but lots of people are not really doing very well, right? It's a cultural problem as well, I think.
And it starts even, you know, very young with even, you know, kind of pitting siblings against each other, or well, your brother did it this way, or your sister does it this way, and not understanding the authentic essence of each human and all the gifts that they have to offer. And even, of course, I can come from this competitive nature of athletics, which is interesting because I was always so sensitive that even though when I was in university, I played field hockey, which is a really like aggressive sport to play, right? So, and I was captain, I was center forward, you know, and I was tiny. So, but I was like, you know, really, I would push myself hard, and I wanted my team to win. So I was always building them up of how to work together. But I still, if the other team lost, I would feel really sad about it and want to comfort them. And it sort of made it very difficult to be, you know, super, you know, like number one when I wanted us all to be winning or just enjoying or having fun. But that seems to have, the pendulum swings far to the other side in Western culture when it comes to being number one or the number one country even, or what does that even mean?
Yeah, because of course you choose what is your measure of success. You know, it's very value-based. You know, for some people, living life expectancy, living longer lives, so that's a measure of success. But you know, if you consider that, probably countries like Japan do a lot better than the United States. Right?
Sure,
or like having a healthy life expectancy. You know, people not having chronic disease. Again, if you look at these kind of statistics, you know. But of course, if you look at in monetary terms, you know, particularly you know, the country with the most billionaires, for instance. So that's very different, right? I think values are what underpin any kind of judgment in life, and I always recommend people to look at their values very carefully because, particularly if they feel they're losing in life in a way or another, you know, sometimes it's just a matter of perspective, isn't it?
Absolutely.
There are lots of beautiful things that you can do, and there are lots of different ways to experience life, and perspective really can change your view of the world and also the way you perceive yourself as being successful or not, right?
And even the value, so when someone starts to you know, and I can use do the self-work, do the work, the values can change because then it's like, wait a minute, actually it makes me so fulfilled to be able to sit with a friend and have a lovely conversation. That takes over. Then I have 25 friends who I hang out with all the time versus having quality versus, you know, quantity. And there was a transcendent writer, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and he had written a poem on what is success, and it was really narrowing it down to, you know, like having the joy and respect of a young child, or, you know, being able to, it's these really simple things. We make life super complicated.
For sure, and So tell me a little bit more about you and Koh Phangan. How did you end up on the island?
How am I still in Koh Phangan is the question.
Well, that's the best place to be right now. I don't recommend going anywhere else.
I tried to make this story short, but there's a little magical quality to it, as there is with most people's stories of how they got here. But I had a very special animal companion. He was my dog, Blue, and he also worked with me. He was a healer dog. And we were together. We met in Guatemala, and then he traveled with me back to the US, and he got very ill in 2019 and passed away. But before he died, I was doing a meditation with him, and he showed me these beautiful places. And I just had this vision, and it was mountains and white cliffs, and then palm trees and turquoise waters and white sand. I decided to leave the US and bought a one-way ticket. And that took me to Scotland, where I completed my firewalk training. So I also lead people to walk on fire.
Wow. That's quite something. Yes. We don't talk about it.
And then I went to England, and then I went to India. And then while I was in India, I thought, where am I going to go? And a friend of mine who was super dear to my heart and I hadn't seen in years said, well, I'm in Koh Phangan, Thailand. You should come here. And so the end of October 2019, I bought a ticket and still here.
Lovely. Maura, thank you very much for this little chat. It's been very interesting talking to you, and I wish we had 2 more hours of video and go through particularly the walking on fire. That was something.
I kind of threw that in at the end, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.